Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Spin It Social Hour. On a rainy day here in northern New Jersey, I think it's raining mostly on the East Coast here, but it's a pleasure to be here with everybody this morning. My name is Stefan Kaplan. I am the founder of the Spin It Social Hour, and I am a social media and visual strategist who started this labor of love when the pandemic hit. Because I am here week after week. This is show number 35 and counting to bring you the best of photography and storytelling from around the world. I have sought out photographers from New York to abroad that basically are here to show you their work, tell you about their journeys. And my goal is to get their name and everything out there for them more, because let's face facts, when this pandemic hit, it's really taken its toll economically on many people, especially the photography industry. And it is my duty, and I wanted to help. So I am a social media and visual strategist. My brand is Spin It Social. I've worked with the likes of the Pulitzer Prizes, AARP, Jackson Charitable Foundation. I've lectured and I've done workshops at Princeton University, Columbia, NYU, and I'm also an adjunct professor at FIT. This morning, it does a heart good to bring on this photographer. Richard Sandler is an amazing, amazing individual. He's one of the legendary street photographers, and he was one of my first teachers that I ever took a course with back in the days at ICP, one of only 3. And he set the fire in certain ways, him and Alan Frame. And I fell in love with photographing the streets many years ago, and Richard is a master at that. So we are here to pay him the respect that he's due and also let him tell his story and have a lot of great fun and a great discussion with him this morning. The buildup that he deserves is right here. Street photography is a wonderful endeavor because you're looking for things that are actually going on, but at the same time, there's that frame. That arrangement of shape just formally is in itself so compelling, says award-winning street photographer and documentary filmmaker Richard Sandler. Sandler's photographs are in the permanent collections of museums and libraries around the U.S. While living in Boston as a macrobiotic chef, Sandler boarded at the house of David McClellan, noted psychologist and Harvard professor. McClellan's wife, Mary, gave Sandler her Leica and taught him how to develop film. Upon seeing his first images, she declared him a photographer. Sandler returned to New York in the 80s. Shooting 4 to 5 rolls of film a day, he documented the devastating effects of crack and crime in densely populated urban spaces. He stopped around 9/11, but it wasn't for another 15 years that his photographs were collected in a book, The Eyes of the City. He explains that the title means that it's not only he who is in the eyes of the city, but also the people looking at him. Its publication marked his leaving the city again, this time for Catskill, New York. My life's work, Sanders says, has been a progression from cultural critique to asking more questions, deeper questions about culture itself, and that inevitably leads to questioning colonialism, capitalism, racism, sexism, classism, and all those ugly isms. Folks, it does me so much good, like I said, to bring on great Richard Sandler. Richard, how are you?
Hey, all right. Can you hear me all right?
I can. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Welcome from glorious downtown Catskill, New York.
Okay.
Right on the Hudson River and between the Catskill Creek.
And the Catskill Creek.
We live on an isthmus here, sort of.
Okay.
Very surrounded by water. It's a very spiritual place, actually. The vibe is very, very strong here.
I've been up there, and the vibe is strong, and it's a great place. And I have to tell you, wow, everybody's chiming in already. Therese Brown from the UK. Hello, Therese. Wonderful to see you here. Let's see some of the other shout-outs. Claudia Paul from Harlem. Daniel Glickman from StreamYard. Yes, StreamYard right here, baby. Got my coffee cup. StreamYard swag. The platform that I do this on. Corinne from California. Marge from Brooklyn. And the list goes on and on. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please share this broadcast with all of your friends and all of your family and everyone so that everyone knows about Richard and his incredible body of work. Richard, going through the work this week with you was like a time warp. It was a throwback to my childhood. It was a throwback to New York City of the days when, as everybody used to say, it was the greatest show on earth. So tell us how the fire got lit, how everything got started, in a great sort of, brief way that we can move on to the body of work. But give us the story, Rich.
Well, the story is that I got bit very hard by photography. Prior to photography, I had been doing a number of things that were basically directed in the helping of other people, as in being a chef in one of the first natural foods restaurants in the United States, and then later as an acupuncturist. So after about 8 years of that life, I got the bug to do something for myself, something quote unquote selfish. Because what I'd doing previously, I guess, wasn't selfish. At least it wasn't aligned that way. And so now I could be free. I could be a photographer. I could roam the streets. And I always wanted to be a photographer, but I was intimidated by the machine aspect of working the camera, like a lot of people. And but I finally conquered that. And when I did, it was a great freedom to just walk around the street and start taking pictures. And I knew from the moment that I got the camera in my hands, right, a Minolta SRT 101 with a 55 millimeter lens on it, I knew immediately that all I wanted to do was shoot on the street.
Well, let me ask you one question, because the thing that, through our discussion this week and prepping for the show and really learning even more about history about you than I knew, and I knew quite a bit, was I'm going to ask you straight off that. Can you tell us more about your experiences in Boston? Because we found it fascinating with David and Mary McClellan, how you got your first camera.
Well, actually, that wasn't she gave me my second camera.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But my experience in Boston with them was that I was very fortunate to live in their house in the first place.
Sure.
They lived in a huge, 8-bedroom house on the top of Hangman's Hill in Cambridge, Mass., the only hill in the town. And they were very supportive people, and they had raised 5 kids in their house, and the kids were gone. And they decided to make their house into a working commune of people who were rather motivated to achieve, more than rather motivated to achieve. David's work was all about achievement in the sense of becoming who you really are, figuring out what your talents actually are, and then becoming that.
Right.
And so we who lived there with him, and we joked even with him that we were his lab rats, that this house full of people, one of them became the psychology column wrote for the New York Times. Anyway, it was a wonderful environment in which to incubate another lifestyle, another way of looking at my life and looking now at the world. Right. and trying to deepen my experience as a human being, I guess I could say. So they gave me that opportunity, and I really ran with it. The darkroom was in the basement. It was Mary's darkroom. She taught me how to develop film and print.
Right.
And then I was very fortunate because I was also able to sit in on a class at Harvard at the time, taught by the great Ben Lifson, who was at one time the photo critic for the Village Voice. Mm-hmm. Very cool guy. And that's where I first heard the names Robert Frank, Gary Winogrand, Andre Cortez, Bill Brandt, Robert Frank. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, normally I ask people who are the photographers that influenced them. I guess I don't need to do that. You just read off the list.
Well, anyway, so I sat in on that class, and my mind just was blown. It was a street photography class, and I just hit the streets and started. And then at the end of the class, at the end of the semester, he said, Gary Winogrand's coming to town. Some of you might want to take a workshop with him. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I did. Mm-hmm. And then that was quite a weekend. We're hanging out with Winogrand and, hearing him discourse on photography, which was mind-bogglingly smart and succinct about expressing the ideas of photography, street photography particularly. Mm-hmm. So, within 6 months, I had a place to live with a dark room. I had people to mentor me. I had a Leica, which Mary gave me.
Right. Hey, Richard, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the camera, you need to just look a little more towards the center, towards the camera. There we go. A little more center. And therefore, no, you're still a little off. Just turn this. There you go. Just so everybody can see your glasses and that beret. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Richard. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
Well, I just was fortunate. I walked into a ready-made scene. So
right.
I guess I was ready for it, and all the stars aligned, I guess.
Yeah, no, they definitely did. Well, we put together quite the journey here to go through a lot of things. And, I have to tell you, you talk about getting the bug and hitting the streets and everything else. Like I said early on, you and Alan Frame at ICP did the same for me. By meeting you guys and by seeing your work early on, you really lit the fire under my butt to hit the streets of New York City. And I'll always be very, very appreciative of that. So, it was a great course. I think the course I took with you was on street photography. What else?
It was. That was what
else could it be?
What year was that?
Oh, God, we don't want to do that to me. It was probably around 95 at the most.
Okay.
Yeah, probably 94, 95 when ICP was up on Museum Mile.
And the mansion, yeah.
Yeah, that mansion. That's right. I love that old building.
Oh, that was a beautiful place.
That was a beautiful building, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now you got the camera angle down perfectly, Rich. That's it right there.
Are we seeing me and Godless there?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, that's David Godless, folks, and his books are out. The first one being called "Histories Made at Night," his rock and roll pictures.
That's right.
And then the book "Godless Streets." Godless Streets.
Wow, unbelievable. But tell us about your love affair with Leicas. Tell us a little about your love with Leicas.
Well, I didn't really ever give it any thought, except that was the right camera for me because many people have had the experience. Obviously, you get it in your hand and you realize this is a very well-made instrument.
Right.
That can maximize your technical abilities. It makes it very, very simple, and it's a very straight-up camera. And the optics are amazing, of course.
Right.
And it has a lot of bad karma.
Well, I have to tell you,
good karma.
I have to tell you, the way we're going to talk about, a couple of things when we get into some of the pictures, but, always when I did watch you on the streets back in the days and everything, always seeing you operate, the way you were able to frame pictures, the way you were able to work the streets for all that they were worth. And I say all that they were worth because it was the greatest show on earth. And I have to tell you, there was no better place to grow up than New York City in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and it was just incredible. But I tell you, man, I had to show this photo, Richard, because I know it's, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but you are one cool cat in this photo. I had to show because I just love this photo of you. Please tell us who took it.
The picture was taken by Alon Coppell. He lives up here in Catskill.
He captured you, man. One cool cat, as I always said about you.
He lives right across the street from me on Main Street.
That's wonderful.
This was at a costume party.
Well, I could see you in that every day because that is you, man. One cool cat, man. But a couple of other photos that were taken by some colleagues. I wanted to mention since you wanted to give some shout outs here. And who took this one of you, Richard?
My friend Fred Askew.
Fred Askew, that's right. Look at that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful photo, man. Great photo of you there.
Yeah, Fritz is really good. You should follow Fritz. I wish I had his Instagram handle, but
well, we'll throw it up there.
Right.
We'll put it in. You can put his name in the chat, and I'll find it and we'll put it up. So right in the private chat there, and then we can take care of that. So, but. I want you to talk about just for a minute also about a photographer that you really think the world of too, and that, as many say, is the man in certain ways. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who this is?
It's Jules Allen, and Jules is a very dear friend, and Jules is a great photographer. I love his work, and I call him my favorite living photographer.
Yeah, Jules is. I tell you, man, his work. Amazing. I've never met him. I always wanted to, but unfortunately, we don't meet everybody in life. But great work. And of course, you're holding your book, which we're going to talk about because Richard packs them in everywhere. This great photo by Grayson Danzig Photography. Check out Grayson Danzig. This was one of Richard's lectures. I wanted to show this because Richard packs them in everywhere they go, everywhere we go, everywhere everybody goes. And he's now here today, and we have incredible live viewership today. But there's also other people involved in putting a great book together. And we have here Regine Montfort. So tell us about Regine.
Well, she's the editor of the book, the first book that I made, The Eyes of the City.
Mm-hmm.
Did it together, and we had a very good experience. And I think we got we found a good way through the material. She's a brilliant editor, has great instincts, and that was at the open.
I could see the great relationship, that you, working relationship that you guys have in doing all this together. And it takes a village, man. It takes a small village, but a village to put together a great book. And you can see that in Eyes of the City. But we're going to start getting into the book here. And man, I have to tell you, this photo, wow, looking at this, the subways, the Eyes of the City, they're right there. Talk about the selection of one of the, Jesus, how many great photos you've taken to hit the cover of the book and be the iconic photo on the cover of the book.
Well, I was on my way to Barron's magazine to deliver photographs. I worked for them as doing, portraiture.
Right.
And there was this woman standing behind the pole and everybody looking at me. And I just moved right into it and made it rather clear that I was photographing, not by waiting, but just by kind of signaling my intention to photograph this.
Right.
Sometimes that's a wonderful thing to do, to engage the people in the picture.
Right.
sometimes it's not. And it's hard to know sometimes which way to go. But in this case, with her eyes, her face being bisected by that pole, I was just so drawn to that, of course, and everybody's looking at me too. And also, this picture was taken with a 21 millimeter lens. That's not a lens I usually work with, right. But I had it on the camera that day, so you can see the door on the left is leaning off to the left. You know, that's distortion from the lens.
Right. Yeah, I shot with an 8. You got me started actually. I got started early on with wide angle lenses, 18, 20s. You know, it was great. I fell in love with them, man. Once you start taking those photos with those, you know, those wide angle lenses, man, it's hard to go back.
I generally don't like them, you know, extremely wide angle lenses, because then it's about the lens. And this one is on the edge of being about the lens. And so that, in a way, that's what makes it work. Now, anything that you push to the extreme but don't go past the extreme is interesting, you know, in the composition of a photograph. So this picture, just to analyze it for a moment, most of it looks quite normal, except that door on the left.
Thank you. Somebody just called my attention to something I have to fix. So please go on now about your Instagram handle. I had a typo in it. So please be aware of that, folks. I'm fixing that right now. It's OHSTOP, OHSTOP, 1946. There we go. Thank you for calling that out. Appreciate it. We've got a lot of editors and very attentive people in the audience here, over 50 watching, and it is awesome. So, but you know, the thing I remember about this photo recently too, Rich, is before the pandemic hit, you were part of a great exhibit at the Museum of the City of New York, one of my favorite museums that I am honored to have work in their permanent collection. And I remember we talked about this photo, and I was going there, and you asked me to grab a photo before it actually went up, before it opened, and I did. And, you know, it's true, you know, the attention to detail that curators give is so amazing, and of course that you give. And, you know, just catching that gentleman on the left there with his eye and his nose just about at the edge there is the key to if you were framing and matting this photo, right?
Well, I assumed it was a mistake, you know, and probably didn't print this picture for, I don't know, 6 or 8 years maybe. Right. Because I wanted the guy's whole face in the picture. Right. And then I lucked out, obviously, because it's cut in the same way that her face is cut. That's right. By the pole, and so it emphasizes that. Now, that was just dumb luck. Right. So, you know, that does happen. Yeah. Particularly, it tends to happen with the best pictures. Yeah, no. So, you know, there's other eyes, you know, watching, shall we say. You know, there's the photo gods that throw you a bone every once in a while. There are. Bimal's watching from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Who else do we have here today? Let's make sure that everybody is acknowledged as they come. Karen Zuzman is here. She's nice enough to put up those photographers. Jonathan, can we have that back for a second? Let's put that back up there. Jules Allen, Fred Askew, Grayson Danzig, and Regina Montfort. Let me say it the right way. Anyway, wonderful. Thank you so much for contributing to the show that way. But let's move on here to some other great frames here. Well, actually, this was a great gathering I had to show because one day G. Paul Burnett, the legendary G. Paul Burnett, took this photo of you guys. And just briefly, I mean, we know who's in the center there. Well, not everybody. I shouldn't say that. But Robert Frank there in the middle with his hand up on one of the photographers. I'm forgetting his name right here. Jason Eskenazi. Thank you. How could I forget Jason's name? Anyway, what a great moment that you guys get together. You did before the pandemic and before Robert's passing to get everybody together in this wonderful group of photographers. And many of them are. Yeah. Nina Berman, Amy Arbus. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of great Jewish photographers in there. Well, that was the point of it. I know. I'm showing this now. I wanted to lead into that with this Happy Purim for this moment here with Robert Frank. Wow, look at that! Look at all the names in here: Sid Kaplan, Ben Lowry,
David Carroll, Carrie Barretts, Nancy Cecil, Amy Arbus, Ruben Radding. My God, it just goes on and on and on, and I should have noted. What's that?
Sarah Krulwich.
Yeah, Sarah Krulwich, who I worked with for many, many years. Oh my God, Sarah was such
staff photographer for the New York Times.
So amazing, so amazing.
And William Coupon in the back, Mark Bussell,
yes, absolutely.
Jeffrey Mermelstein.
And I had noted there's so much research in this show. I had noted who took this photo, and I did not put it on the photo here. And I needed to do that. I'm going to have to find the name and make sure I put it in the comments for everybody. So,
Robert.
What's that?
And Robert right in the middle.
And Robert right in the middle.
With a big smile on his face.
So let's move to, some of the work. We're going to show a lot of work here that is also going into a possible second book, as you said. So let's talk about that, and let's go through a bunch of these.
Well, this is from the first book.
This is in the first book, right? Yeah. So we're going to start with the first book here.
Yeah.
And the World Trade Center. Talk for a moment about the World Trade Center, Richard.
Well, it was always there,
right? And
it was more beloved than we knew, obviously. For its absence, which was at least a distance and direction orientation machine. If you saw the World Trade Center, you kind of knew where you were. Right. So it had a very interesting function. Philippe Petit walked from one to the other, and there's a guy that climbed up it. I mean, it just invited interaction, one way or another. It demanded interaction. And plus the whole, destruction of Lower Manhattan, that Danny Lyon documented, that required it, right? That was required for it was, in itself such a scar on New York that there was enormous energy in those structures, I think. So, and I always had a bad feeling about it, though, in terms of the possibility for disaster. So I was always photographing it, always, everywhere I went. I'd try, if I could, I'd include the World Trade Center in the photograph. And then when I became a videographer, I would videotaping it all the time. So, it's the New York has a deep, dark history, and if you live in a place long enough, you get to feel the threads of both its perfections and its flaws. Absolutely. And
that is a great way of putting it. A great way of putting it.
I was absolutely out to engage both aspects of New York. The New York that's under the surface, literally in the sense of the subway, and under the surface in terms of history. Of its history, particularly in the colonial period, right? And so, right. Eventually it became the pre-colonial period as well.
Well, I have to tell you, looking at this photo here brings me back to the Bowery days, because, man, people who don't know what the Bowery was like, wow.
I hate to tell you, this is Boston. This is not the Bowery. But, it's the same situation. But, the reason why
you got me on that one. Okay.
The reason why it's Boston is because these guys who drink are wearing, sports coats. They're wearing, they're dressed up to drink. That's Boston for you. That's the difference. Right there is the snapshot of the difference between Boston and New York. Well, but this was an interesting picture because I had seen that scroll up there, "Fuck work." I had seen that at least 2 weeks ago. And this was early in my years as a photographer. This is 1978. So I was keeping a notebook of places that I wanted to go back to remind myself of places where pictures might be taken. And this was one of those places. And amazingly, it came true. It's almost as if I willed it into existence. But
Hey,
this,
Richard,
when I
shift over just a bit. Shift over a bit the other way, because I want to show this photo in a certain way. There you go. Go ahead. Go ahead, bud. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So anyway, this was Boston. This is Mass Ave in Boston, and the guy on the right, his hands look like a surgeon's hands. They're so
do.
So beautiful. That pinky on the other guy's thumb right there. I mean, these are the kinds of gifts. That's what I'm talking about, that you get in the best pictures, apparently. And the fact that his, foot touches the bottom of the frame,
right.
Which has, it has its own emotion. The frame itself, the construction, the architecture of the frame creates emotion,
right.
Particularly when things are on the edge, like that foot there. It's
right.
like almost imperfect, but it's perfect, and you know what I mean. It just insists upon this moment being captured.
It does. It
really you could even make out a crazy case for images having the images themselves having a say in it. It's right. Sometimes it's more than meets the eye.
Well, more than meets the eye for somebody who put out a book called Eyes of the City is a perfect way of putting it. But, one of the things I want to do, because like I said, putting a book together is such a special thing, and I can hardly wait if you do the second book. But like I said, it always takes a village. And, I know how beautiful it is to work with editors and do things. So, I wanted to bring on a friend of yours here to talk a little with you.
Hello, my dear, from France.
Surprise, from Paris, or from France. No. I'm sorry.
Bonjour, Richard.
6 hours in the future.
Yes,
what,
I am.
What does the future hold for us?
Well, what would I say? I would say a wood-burning stove with a nice fire in the wood-burning stove for all of you there, and the countryside for a walk before night comes.
Well, bonjour, Régine.
Bonjour from France. It's a pleasure to be joining as a surprise.
C'est mon plaisir. J'ai fait mes études au lycée français. To everybody, I did my studies at a lycée français. So I wanted to surprise Richard with his editor this morning because, you know me, I have to throw in a surprise here and there. And Régine, welcome to the Spin It Social Hour.
Thank you very much. So glad to be here. Hello, Richard. So good to see you.
Hello. Great to see you.
We have been greatly separated with this pandemic, and now
I wanted to bring
away from ever.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring a little comfort, a little French comfort here for everybody. And I saw the photos of you and Régine, and I saw the beauty of the relationship of working together and doing this. And I said, you know what? I'm going to contact her right away, tout de suite, as we say, and I'm going to bring her on if she can come on, and here she is. So why don't you guys talk for a few minutes, for example, a little about the book and even a couple of photos here.
All right. So maybe that would be the time to maybe share some spreads that we were particularly fond about, Richard. And it's Regina. It's Regina.
Regina, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say Regina. Right. Excuse me.
All right. I used to hate to have that name, but it's actually a pretty good one.
I have a lot of friends from the lycée days that were named Régine, so sorry.
Anyway, I see we have some friends in the audience as well, so hello to the friends in the audience.
Absolutely. Hello to everybody from around the world. We have people watching from Paris, South Africa, you name it, everywhere here. Everybody's here. Mark Bassell is here. Oh, thank you so much. Wow, I'm honored. Former great New York Times photo editor, magazine, and everywhere at the New York Times. Thank you, Mark, for being here. Anyway, let's have you guys talk about this frame since Richard and I pulled a bunch of pictures. Let's have you talk about this first.
Richard.
Yeah, Richard, sorry.
This photograph was one that it was something I was always looking for, which was the racial disparity in America. how to photograph that, how to make pictures that, really make a statement about that without hitting you over the head. And I think this one really hits the sweet spot. And also, the frame being so complete in a way, gives it serves up a level of beauty that allows you to take the content in a little bit, I think, or at least to make your own projections upon it. It asks more questions than it answers. So that's what I like about this one particularly.
Regine, let me ask you, Regina, in putting a book together like Eyes of the City, and hopefully even a second book, I mean, what are some of the things that, as an editor, that you're looking for in Richard's photos to bring into, this book in the curated selection that you make?
Well, to begin with, I knew I would have the pleasure and the privilege to work with great photography. And when I first discovered Richard's work, I was just astounded by the richness of the frames.
Right.
And when the particularity of the Leica that I love is because having no mirror, the photographer is really able to anticipate what's about to come in the frame. And that we miss a bit with a reflex camera, even that split 60th of a second or little moment. So I knew I was dealing with very rich images and content, and the subject interested me very much, and of course to work with Richard. So we really wanted to be free at first, because Richard had his work looked at, put together, edited a bit, and it was really, we started fresh. And the idea was really to take people on a journey. The beginning of a sequence is always the most difficult, but we also found that once that was established, we could really ride along, and we were on that journey, and it was really an incredible experience to work together with Richard. And we would get very excited about the juxtapositions and how images were speaking to each other and what it said. So we also made sure not to shy away from any images that may be perceived as disturbing. I think it was good to awake people and show how situations coexist. And there is, even through the disparities, there is a residual harmony. And stop me if you disagree, Richard, in the language I'm using right now. But this is what it felt to me that we had this opportunity to bring in all these elements that would conflate in creating this narrative and this journey through the city.
Well, that's what it is.
Although we have images that are external to New York,
right,
but they were really part of Richard's journey. So it was very important to bring them as the last image in the book. And in terms of working on the sequence, what we find, and it's valid for almost every book, is it's possible to reverse the beginning and the end. And at one point we played with that, if you recall, Richard.
Yeah, that was a perfect picture.
Yeah, we moved the end of it, and we brought it to the beginning, and we say, no, it's going back to the end. So it's also a feeling that it's very solid when we're able to do that, really reverse the script. So we worked. It took us a while, and we worked with a small laser prints. All of the same size, which really allowed us to focus on content, not being disrupted by different sizes. And and created this, as it's called in the French, which I like, the chemin de fer, the railway
right.
journey, creating a sequence. Right. And we worked really in this old-fashioned way of working on the floor, the carpet of, the wood floor and carpet in Richard's apartment. Later on, and it was very beautiful experience and very mellow and freeing and enjoyable. One has, putting a book together should really be a joy.
Well, I tell you, I could see, I really have good intuition. I really understand people well, I think. And I saw that photo of you two, and I said, you know what? I have to have you on, to say what you just said and talk about this. But Richard, talk about some of what Regina said about, bringing in a few photos from other places like New England. That Boston one you got me on, I thought it was the Bowery. God help me. And then this one here, talk about that for a minute, because you wanted to talk about this photo in particular.
Well, pretty much that's what I was going to mention, was that this at one point had been the first photograph, and for quite a while, actually, I think. Right. We didn't reverse them, I think, until the end. But one thing I want to reiterate is what Regina did, which was make the beginning. So it was basically Regina that threw down the first, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 or 15 pictures. Mm-hmm. And it's true. That was the moment that the book was formed. Mm-hmm. And basically we were just toying with the Rubik's Cube of the ordering and the juxtaposition based upon the beginning that Regina started. It didn't stay exactly that way, but the point was we saw where we were going, where this train was headed. Yes. And that took all of the pressure off. It made it very easy. We worked together very, very well, and I'm always have deep gratitude for that, because I'd never done a book before, so I didn't realize that you can, begin to set the imprint of the book and then, follow its essence, mm-hmm. and then the book is making itself. So that's what I think Regina's incredible skill is to coax out what the work wants to be. Let the work speak to you.
Right.
I know it's nebulous, but it's very true.
It's really about distilling a body of work, and the beginning is always tough.
It is,
because it sets the tone.
Right.
And the beginning is successful. We feel it, and we know we on the right track. And then after that, it's about bringing it all together. And it's a discovery. And at some point, the sequence starts to dictate itself. The sequence tries to tell you what it wants you to do. Right. And we had a lot of images to work with. And also, there is strong social commentary. And it was special in that way, and also and just rich. We had so much work to.
Right. Well, the thing that always struck me about Richard's photos, I'm a born and bred New Yorker. I was born and raised in Greenwich Village and Manhattan, and I have to tell you, I rode these trains for years and ran the streets of New York City as a kid for years, whether it was on my roller skates, skateboard, unicycle, you name it. I was all over the streets. But the grit, the true essence of New York City, is masked over by so many people out there. But this was really New York, and he captured it to the T every time he was on the street. His vision and his way of capturing life on the streets. These days with smartphones and everything else, I know, Richard, I wanted to talk to you about smartphones, because I know that, you don't get that same reaction these days from people, because everybody's heads are buried in their smartphones everywhere they go. Talk about that for a second, Richard.
Well, I suppose the overview of the work in terms of our recent past is that this is the last moment before computers and cell phones and the digital world.
Yeah.
This is, from 1977 to, 1992,
Right.
Basically.
Right.
The majority of the pictures are.
You said it perfectly yesterday. I wrote it down because I couldn't forget this quote. The last gasp of the analog world leading up to the millennia. It's so true. I mean, that is like literally the quote right there.
Well, I mean, the millennium was sort of a joke, but anyway, people were insecure about what it might bring, but there was the internet right at the millennium. Right. There were cell phones right at the millennium.
Right.
So it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that, something was going to change in a very huge way, right. Very, very quickly. We're still spinning from it.
Well, I have to tell you, people who didn't ride the New York City subways back in the days do not understand the experiences that took place on them.
Well, look at all this emotion, all this expression, all
Exactly.
This angst, all this beauty, that happens from the random accumulation, the layering of different people's lives and experiences on planet Earth, spaceship Earth,
That's right.
It was just a remarkable time because there was so much self-expression.
Well, what a remarkable photo.
And so not corporate.
Right.
I mean, you'd see corporate people get on these trains and they would just hide within themselves. They couldn't deal with this. They couldn't deal with this level of unprivileged, maybe the privilege of expression. They couldn't deal with it. Right. It was. But, this picture, it's another one of those ones that, you just get lucky. And if you have your camera, with you all the time, you can make the luck to some extent, just because it happens to everybody. Right. But, this couple having a moment of nose to nose, eyeball to eyeball, they're just looking into each other's soul, as deeply as two people can. And these two dudes on the train are, in shades. They're hiding. They look like undercover agents. The guy on the right, by the way, it turned out was somebody's physics teacher in Manhattan. He was a physics teacher. The guy on the right, he was ID'd.
Well, I tell you, they could have been any two detectives, really, too. They're real undercover detectives because they're right out of an old school New York City detectives movie.
This is another one. This is another one that I didn't print for a long time because I approached this with, I was really looking for pictures that were perfect in every way.
Right.
And I did. This one is imperfect in the sense that. That's Darryl Strawberry up there on the top, on the left, on that
right.
A glass of milk. It says milk there, actually. It's cut off. And I really wanted that in the picture, but in my haste, I framed it improperly. But it works fine because you never know that. And I realize I have to see it from the viewer's point of view, not from my point of view.
Right.
But that was a helpful way for me personally to edit my work, which was to go through the first bunch of pictures for the first book in a way where there were no loose. I tried to find pictures that had, very few loose ends in a compositional sense, right. Just for the purpose of, supporting the content.
Right. Well, one of the things we wanted to do when you and I were working on putting this show together to, the body of work that we're going to show even more of the first book, the second book, we picked some from the first book. We had that great slideshow at the beginning, and now we're going to get into other things. Hold on. Edward Leskin says, imagine the contrast with today with everyone wearing masks, Richard. I am sure you are drawing contrast now and then when you look back at your images. Please share your thoughts on times past and what we have today.
Well, we're living in a time of penance, where it's we're paying for the sins of the fathers, shall we say, Mm-hmm. This destruction of the environment that looses viruses onto the world, of the ecosystems being torn down everywhere, is the reason, and we're all to blame. So I like this time that we're in right now because it's real. It's more real than anything that's come in quite a while. And it's really important for us to begin to ask, more structural, even existential questions about how we live.
Right.
And we're doing that now. And that's good. That's wonderful.
And in certain ways,
go with it. And this is a good use of fossil fuels right now. This
have to look deep inside.
What we're doing right now. I don't think that the Earth minds the use of fossil fuels for this. It does for almost 99% else of the internet, but not for this. Right. So I thank you, very much, really, for doing this. This is good. You're bringing us all together, and we're in a very difficult time, but a very potentially beautiful time. And
that is one of the reasons
grow into a greater state of peace and respect, for the planet and for ourselves and all creatures. So, this is very good. I choose to look at it very positively.
Well, and there are positive things. I mean, bringing all the community together that I'm trying to bring together from the photography world. Regina, by the way, your words to me the other day meant the world when you said to me, it's such a wonderful thing that you're doing, bringing the photography community together every week and putting together this work every week. Thank you. That meant the world to me. And I wanted to say, it really is a passion, a labor of love of mine to do this after all the years as a photo editor at the Times, as a photojournalist, as a social media guy now, social media and visual strategist. I work with the Pulitzer Prizes. I failed to mention that in the beginning. My God, how did I do that? But I cover the Pulitzer Prizes every year, doing things. But tell us right here about Richard and Regine. So there's two worlds that Richard covered a lot. And we talked about this. There's the underground, the subways, and the trains, and there's the above ground, the gods of Times Square, all the stuff dealing with the streets above ground. Like, for instance, here, Richard, you used flash back in the days in a way that very few people did. Talk about that a bit, please.
Well, New York is dark. And it's difficult to photograph in the winter,
right?
Particularly on dark days,
right?
The wider the aperture, the more difficult street photography is,
right?
So when I first started photography, my mentors taught me how to use the flash from day one. So literally from the very beginning, using the Leica. I was using the flash in 1977. And it was very apparent very quickly that was going to define much of my, work as a photographer, because you have such an advantage using the flash on the street in the winter, when it's dark in New England.
Right.
And so it was used in this case, in a more quote unquote normal way. The shutter speed is probably, the sync speed of a Leica, which is a 50th of a second. But I was extending the shutter speed to a quarter of a second and an eighth of a second and a 15th of a second. And that gives you two images. So you are now layering the flash image on top of the ambient light image.
Right.
And creating effects that you didn't see really in the camera. You couldn't see the extension of the effect of the extension of the shutter speed. You can't see that.
Right.
So it's a surprise. And, it's somewhat of an exercise in randomness and chance operation, shall we say. And I love that. I love that about it. And so I did that from day one. And, came down to New York and started doing it first in Boston, and then came down to New York and started, continuing that in Boston, in New York.
Regina, talk to us, please, for a moment about this, using flash versus not using flash, the power of using flash with certain photos, and also curating photos in a body of work like this that bring out certain elements in photos like this and the street.
Well, Richard is very careful. The images that he uses flash with are usually very dramatic, so they punctuate the visual through the narrative. As we did with, we used the fact that there were images in the subway and images on the street, so we take the viewer or the reader underground and above ground, and we had a lot of fun doing this, if you recall, Richard. that really sort of govern a bit the pace of the book. And I don't really think so much. For me, it's about the resulting image, the complexity, and knowing when to use the flash. And in this case, the flash is very complementary to the subject matters, and it really emphasizes. It just emphasizes the dramatic aspect and sometimes the absurd. I mean, we have a whole section here in Times Square which is very wild.
Right. Oh yeah. No. Well.
And we wanted also, again, it's very important. We can look at an image alone, but the beauty of creating a sequence is we tell a story of coexistence, which is so much what New York is. Right. Where the madness of the streets, right. The particularity, all the different personalities and layers, and I would say economic layers and personalities, economics, all of that I think is infused in the images that we see. And in light of the cell phones, it was so good to work with so many images where we didn't see cell phones. Right.
No, absolutely.
And, because I think they just kill images, and I am absolutely allergic at entire street photography today with too many pictures of people looking at their cell phone or holding their cell phone, and it gets very redundant to me. So I think it's hard to escape that for photography today, but it was a treat not to have to deal with the cell phone element in the
No, I have to tell you, it's really true. Going back through bodies of work like this, it really does. It really struck me about the fact that, you can't take a picture these days almost without somebody in the background, either looking at a phone or taking a selfie of themselves or other photos. I mean, this photo here, for instance, of Grand Central, would have, there would have been about 5 to 6 people at least looking down or looking at a phone these days.
Well, and therefore they would not be so present in the moment.
Right.
For the photographer to actually capture.
Right. Exactly.
What are you saying?
Moments and what they can be, because it's the experience. And of course, what's beautiful in Richard's images portraying people in the street is that he's very quick. And so when you have this ability to disappear, right. You can, like this picture in the subway, there are all these worlds, the two men are in their own world. Right. Then we can imagine, we can perhaps imagine a dialogue they may have had. And then this couple in the background. So it's just so rich, and it's an ability. And now with the cell phone, people are so involved in themselves, and actually even photographers looking at their screen and their all the time miss images, because we should be with the camera, one with the camera, and trusting that, and just be there at recording what's going on. And now you see people photographers looking at the camera, and they're missing pictures during that time. I believe it's really very important to be in the moment.
No, it is, and that's why
this image is fabulous that way. It's incredible. It's almost it's just a classic. It's one of the first images I saw of Richard, and the other one is the one at Grand Central, Richard, where the man is looking, and there is the clock, and it looks, and so many worlds are colliding.
Right.
And that's what we find in the record of the city that Richard has given us.
Right. Well, that is exactly what it is. It is a record. It is a historical record of New York City for a good many years. And we're indebted to Richard, in my opinion, I am, for doing this work, because this photo here, in my opinion, will rank as one of the great photos of all time, and of Grand Central in particular. It is just magnificent. I mean, it has everything in it.
And we should add that Richard is a master printer. I have spent years around analog photography,
Right.
and I have a really great appreciation for the ability to interpret a photograph and a negative. So it excels, and that image is taken beyond and to another level, and incredible. I mean,
well, that is
treated differently, and it wouldn't say the same thing. And that's also the beauty of discovering that in a darkroom.
No, that is. And Richard, talk about that for a second, printing these photos and your love of printing, because like Regina said, you know, you do a lot of printing. And one of the things I wanted to quickly mention, we'll be running a banner below. By the way, Regina, we've been showing your Instagram handle and your website on the bottom to make sure everybody can check out your work and learn more about you.
Thank you.
You know, of course, please, my honor.
It's been very quiet on my social media because I've been wanted to be in the present here in my corner of Brittany.
Okay.
Cows and horses and wild birds, and
wow. Well, I've traveled to Brittany. I've been to Concarneau and Bénodet, and j'ai mangé les crêpes bretons. Alors, I've eaten the wonderful crêpes in Brittany. So, anyway, I wanted to say that Richard, you know, just briefly, you made an incredibly generous offer. I'm running it now. That any body who wants to buy some prints that, you know, they've seen on the show here, limited editions, and if they mention the Spin It Social Hour, that you will generously contribute, you know, 30% of the profits to fund the Spin It Social Hour. I have to tell you, it made me tear up last night, and I really appreciate it. It's very generous. But more importantly, let's talk about printing and your love of printing.
Well, it's a wonderful craft to learn, and it's a difficult craft, and I like that about it. With computers, you know, it's a lot easier to exorcise a perfect image, right. But with analog, it's much more difficult. And the beauty of analog printing is that every print is different, no matter how much you try to make, you know, two prints the same, there's always going to be slight differences between them. Also, accidents come into play, and you make a print that just for some reason is better than all of the others, and that's beautiful. So, you know, it's the part of photography that's like painting in a way. You know, you're painting with light and interpreting also, like brushstrokes do. So I just love it. I've never stopped, and when digital happened, I never gravitated towards it in the same way. I didn't love it. I think I love it more for video and film than I love it for still photography. That is motion film. Mm-hmm. So we're actually looking at the pictures now that will be in a second book. Right. So it's pictures from the same era, but you know, it digs at the scab of life a little bit more. You know, it gets under the surface in slightly different ways, and so this will be the work that hopefully Regina and I are going to work on, either together or remotely. I don't know. It's possible, I guess, to do a book remote now, and we'll do that if we have to. But this is the body of work that will form a second book. And the idea of the book is that like I said, there's more street karma here, you know.
Right. Well, you know, I wanted to stop on this frame here, Regina and Richard, because it's a good moment here to stop for a second. We have much more to cover, and we're not shortchanging Richard's story here. It's the Spin It Social Hour, but the Spin It Social Hour expands when it's needed. Anyway, this photo here, you know, the gods of Times Square. We know also that you've worked on this incredible amount you put a lot of time into filmmaking, and you did a production called The Gods of Times Square. This photo here is what I wanted to stop on for a second, and I wanted to show a quick little clip from something here. So give me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, And with the magic of StreamYard, the platform of choice for me, I love StreamYard. Check them out, everybody. StreamYard is the live streaming platform of choice. Love it to death. So we're going to go here, and we're going to go to
Reverend Billy.
Yeah. Let me just mute myself for a second.
Sound. Put the sound up. Sound up.
That's as much as I can get.
Okay.
Within 21 months, Disney will have purchased, bought out Murdoch, Turner, Gates, Sony, Mitsubishi, and the big German banks. They'll all go the way of the mouse. Mickey Mouse will take over. We will be led into the burning lake of fire, huddling little naked sinners in eternity. And then we'll look up at the mountain above the lake, and we'll beg that mountain to throw down its stones and crush us. Change our consciousness, because we're so full of regret for having lived such intensely sinful lives. And then we'll look up at that mountain and we'll go, no, that can't be. That mountain has big round ears. That mountain is Mickey fucking Mouse.
You're muted.
We can hear you, Stephen.
Right. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm so into that moment that I forgot to unmute myself for a second. But you want to talk about a moment there of Times Square and the true essence of the gods of Times Square. Well, that clip there, wow, Richard. Talk about the film a bit, Richard.
Well, in 1992, I started shooting video on the street in New York every day, and I got bit by video every bit as hard as I got bit by still photography. Mm-hmm. At first, it was very unsettling, and I carried my Leicas with me and my video camera on the street every day. But after a while, the video became more important to me.
Right.
And I was surprised that happened, but it did. And so I was shooting video every day on the street, everywhere I went, on the subway, right, in Times Square, literally everywhere I went, I was shooting video. And it was like I was, kind of possessed by it, as I had been initially by photography. And still was, but video was great because now you can open your ears. You can, sound can carry a picture too. Right. And my first love, of course, was radio before television, and then television. And I saw television production as a kid because my godfather was a producer of early television shows. My mother was an actress. She was on TV. She was a TV actress. She was a radio actress. She was a stage actress. And so now this, brought me back to my beginning and my first exposures to media itself, and felt so at home immediately. I just loved shooting video everywhere. And made 3 documentaries about New York City. This one, the clip, is The Gods of Times Square. And that was from shooting video in Times Square every day, more or less every day, and very often every night as well, from 1992 to 1998. And concurrently with that, I was also working in the East Village every day, particularly in the morning and in the evening. And on the way to Times Square and back to the East Village, I was shooting on the subway. And so I made three documentaries about New York: The Gods of Times Square, Brave New York, which is a documentary about the East Village, shot from 92 to 2004. Mm-hmm. catching, the really in the teeth of the gentrification of the Lower East Side, and the big banks coming in, the things that Reverend Billy was just talking about, and then I made a doc called Sway about the subway, and that was from 12 years of shooting concurrently with these other two bodies of work.
Right.
So,
so let me ask you a quick question. When you started the video, this is the big dilemma sometimes I had whenever I did video, because I'm a purist. I love shooting, just straight pictures, but I've also gotten into video quite a bit, and I love video now. The power of video, especially in our social media age too. Sorry, Regina, I'm going to talk a little about social media here, but the bottom line is with smartphones and social media, that's how I'm making my living these days. And I use social media in a very specific way. I'm very, very strategic in how I do social media. But I have to tell you the difference between being able to work with a phone and take pictures these days in video compared to carrying around a video camera like Richard did and also working with a Leica at the same time. Richard, what was your basis? So if you were filming something and yet you really, that moment arrived where, God, you wanted to have your camera in position instead of the video. What was your dilemma with that sometimes?
Well, I just want to say before I answer that, this picture is squares the circle. This goes back to the beginning because now I'm holding a film camera. That's right. A Super 8, film camera, right? And the Leica. So, and that was the next thing that happened. That video got me into film.
Right.
Video got me into motion picture film, and now I'm as into motion picture film as I was into video. The problem, however, is that it's way more expensive.
Right.
So that's another issue.
Right.
But
that moment of deciding still or video, the way many people have to do, and
I didn't have the problem actually,
because
as far as I know, I was one of the first digital still users as well, because the VX 1000, the Sony VX 1000, had a still function on it.
Right.
I'm not talking about taking a frame from video and making a still out of it. I'm talking about a still video camera. I'm sorry, a still digital camera was built into a video camera.
Right.
Separate functions.
Right.
And so I was walking around the streets in, 96, making digital stills all day long, as well as shooting video. So I didn't have the problem with the VX 1000. It was, sometimes I would make a still and sometimes I wouldn't. I'd keep the video going.
Sure.
But, generally speaking, it's about sound. Mm-hmm. It's about what somebody or is saying or what I'm hearing. So, the sound is at least 50% of video. So, it's a whole different world. It's apples and oranges comparing still photography to motion with or without sound. Right. They're very, very different. But it was just wonderful to be doing both, and to keep enough interest and practice of still photography with the camera, because I never stopped taking stills with the Leica. I always had the Leica with me. There were times when I put it down, but it always came back, because still photography is way more difficult than video or filmmaking, I feel.
Oh yeah.
It's very much, it's very much more difficult to make a really good still photograph. So I always loved the challenge of it.
Right. Let me ask you about, your experience as an editor, as somebody who works in the publishing world and everything. What are your views and what are your thoughts about the multimedia culture that we live in these days?
Well, I think it must be very difficult for, I know photojournalists I am connected with who have to carry their laptops so they can transmit images, do video. I mean, I am the type of person, I like to focus on one thing. So I'm totally old school like that. So I think it must be very difficult when one can be personally, as a photographer in my days behind the lens, I like to really decide of the type of camera I'm going to be working with, whether it's a medium format, and knowing, deciding your tool, about deciding what your tools are. And it's so liberating to be able to say, okay, I'm going to be working in that way, in that manner, with, let's say, a 2 1/4 camera that allows, or twin lens cameras that allows us to really slow down.
Right.
And or decide to work just in chrome. When I was sent on assignments, I refused to shoot both color and black and white, for that matter, because we have to be able to. I think it must be extremely difficult to have to see everything, to perceive everything, and to really feel it in order to translate that. I mean, it's really a photograph. It's translating that. Multi-dimensional reality on a 2-dimensional frame. That's the way I look at photography, or a 2-dimensional plane. So working with, doing video and still, and carrying a laptop, that must be very painful. And for those who do not have to deliver their photographs as quickly, I think it's good to focus on the. Of course, it may be it's comfortable. I enjoy working with the iPhone to take pictures or to do videos or to do like 1 minute videos. But it's just a matter of knowing, let's say, having to split our attention in so many ways. It's. I find it. I'm a person that like to focus on one thing. If I work on a book, I like to work on one book at a time.
Well, Edward
here. Delve in a body of work and feel it, so I can have dreams about the sequence, wake up and think about having some kind of a revelation about a pairing, or and that's beautiful, because that's really living in the moment. And at my age, that's what I love to do anyway.
Well,
so
Edward,
30-year-old.
No, thank you so much for that. That's what I wanted to hear from you, is what your true thoughts are. Put that comment back up from Edward, please, Jonathan. Edward Leskin, one of our big fans and a guest in 2 weeks from now on the Spin It Social Hour, an avid Leica user, is I am a horrible multitasker, he says. I hyper-focus. So for me, I can only shoot still images. And in fact, a minimum of equipment, anything else distracts me too much. My choice is my Leica M10 and 35 millimeter lens most of the time. Anything more would take me away from pure image making, but that is how my brain is wired. I get it. It's very true. The multitasking that we're under these days is a bit much, even for me sometimes. But, it's the new world we live in, and some of us have to live in it. Others can focus a little more. I know it is a dilemma I face a lot as somebody who loves to do everything in this day and age. But we're going to run through some more photos here in the book, Richard, and why don't you, talk about, for instance, some of these, like this classic image here of the old cigar guy here. What a moment. What a moment, man.
I wasn't shy.
No, not at all. But, we went through some. We're going to go through more here. So many images to show here. Let's run through a bunch as we continue the conversation. Folks, by the way, you're watching the Spin It Social Hour. My name is Stefan Kaplan. I'm the founder of the Spin It Social Hour, and we are now 35 shows in, I'm proud to say, bringing on such great photographers from around the world like Richard Sandler, including editors such as Regina Montfort here, all the way from Bretagne in France. Oh my God, what an honor. I'm so happy to have you on as well. It's wonderful. I have a love for Brittany like nothing else ever since I visited there. One of my best friends is from there, Stéphane Le Pichon. So his wife was chiming in earlier and saying hello, my friend Leica. But anyway, let's go through some of these. Richard, here's another one that could easily fit into the gods of Times Square. But what was it that you were, when you were working on this also with the still images, what were some of the things that grabbed you the most working on the Gods of Times Square?
Well, it was about the fact that people with religion on their mind would come to Times Square to talk about it.
Right.
And Times Square had always been a kind of speaker's corner, the one spot in New York City where you could go and be heard if you had something to say, or if you were interested in just putting your finger on the pulse of New York. That's where the pulse of New York is the strongest, is Times Square.
Yeah. No, it really was. It really was an incredible place to be around. But, then there's the other side of Times Square, that, oh, my God, there were always these incredible moments. There were chess players. There was the craziness of the Port Authority and all the theaters on 42nd Street that were at all.
Yeah. So much going on. So much life. I mean, in this case, you've got a cop dressed as a cop. You've got a person dressed as a cop. He's obviously a chess player too, and just the level of sort of just analog humanity, if such a dumb thing can be said, but I guess kind of has to be said, existed, and this, like I say, was the last gasp of people. Everybody being literally on the street. There was no place to hide.
Right.
You were on the street. You couldn't, be on the phone or in you might have a Walkman on, but you were on the street, and it was quite a show. Now that's definitely a guy, I think.
No, it is. It is. He's wearing a wig.
Yeah.
You gotta love the taxi drivers from back in the day, man.
Listen, so let me explain this. So these pictures that you're seeing now, the vast majority of them, I'm seeing for the first time myself. I printed these in the last 4 years. I've been in the darkroom a lot. I've been going through all of my work and coming up with a lot of pictures that I had either not seen or overlooked a number of times previously.
Right.
So
what a treat to have them on here.
Keep moving.
Okay, what a treat to have them on here. By the way, hold on one second. I want to bring on Jonathan Borstein, my co-producer, who helps so much every week in putting the show together. I couldn't do it without him. We're a team, and he's a dear friend and a great all-around writer and New Yorker. So, Jonathan, introduce yourself, please.
I am Jonathan Borstein, a full-time entrepreneur, a sometime writer, and part-time tech. And my question is more involved location than photography, because I know that Richard said that he lived in the East Village, Lower East Side for a while. But this morning, Marble Collegiate has all but burnt to the ground. Do you have any memories of the church?
The church burned?
Yeah, last night. Yeah.
Oh.
Second Avenue and 7th Street.
Horrible fire last night. Horrible.
Well, my oh man, that's terrible. My enduring memory will be taping Arlene Gottfried singing gospel in there.
Oh man.
I have a beautiful tape of Arlene there. That I shot in the 90s, like 95 or 96. Oh, that's just terrible.
Yeah, that's very sad.
So sorry to hear that.
Oh, there was a really bad fire on.
Such a good church, such good people.
Yeah,
there's really they're true Christians in the best sense of the word.
Yeah. No, I saw some video on it, and it was just bad. I hope the firemen, I hope everybody involved are okay. It was, and you could see it from miles. It was really a big fire. So, especially right now with the pandemic and everything, just so hard to do everything. The FDNY is so incredible, at taking on those blazes. But Jonathan, go ahead. I'm sorry, you were talking about asking Richard a question about that.
Well, he answered my question.
Right.
There are very even sadder is that I believe there are 2 deaths, but that hasn't been fully confirmed yet. But anyway, on that sad note, I will let the show go on.
All right, Jonathan. Thank you for being here. By the way, Jonathan drives the car behind the scenes every week, putting the comments up, taking care of the banners and tickers, and contributing in many other things as we put this show together every week. So thank you so much, Jonathan. All right, we'll see him soon. So we're going to go on, as Richard was urging me to go on with many more of the photos here as we go through a bunch of these. Richard, continue talking about this other body of work that you're going through for possibly a second book.
Well, let's just let some play.
Okay.
Just basically, this is not in any way edited.
Right.
I allowed the randomness of the algorithms of whatever to order them. I didn't play with the order yet. So
I love that you yeah.
This is the raw stuff, and this is what's awaiting a sequence.
Right.
That picture I printed for the first time like 2 weeks ago. I had never ever. I didn't even know I had it. This is like I called this one fur vulva.
Yes.
It's almost like she's giving birth to herself. It's like it's just and this one's also got the long shutter speed in it, the flash and the long shutter speed. And
I'm gonna
honestly, I passed over this picture dozens of times.
I'm gonna need some water here as we're
Richard and Stephen, I can see this as a transition for the second chapter.
Yes, absolutely.
I think Regina and I are going to have a good time with these pictures.
Yeah. No,
I feel really good about them.
Look at these. I mean,
I'm doing this for the first time as well, Stephen.
Oh,
yeah.
Look at that! Wow, what a great.
Except for a couple of them that I remember.
Folks, if you want
from the past, but all of these new images, some of them I've seen on Instagram, but maybe, it's exciting to see them.
If you're watching the Spin It Social Hour, which over 40 to 50 people are live right now, which is a great audience, and so many comments. Do we have any comments we can throw up on the screen that we can share? Because so many people have been contributing. Before we go on here, we want to make sure that we acknowledge some other people. But that's really incredible to hear. I had no idea that you hadn't seen a lot of these, and it's wonderful to have you on as the editor of Richard's book and working with him hand in hand to go through these then with you guys. This is a real treat. Look at these, folks. You're getting a firsthand look at many classic Richard Sandler photos here that will most likely go in a second book that him and Regina will work on together.
Mine is already going. Huh?
Yeah, no, we covered a lot, but we have to. I love this. It's like looking at two beehive hairdos from behind back in the days, man.
You can take Edward's comment off.
Oh yeah. Okay. So let's go by that, and let's go. Wow. I mean, look at these as we go through them. And let's hold the comments for now as we go through these photos so nothing is clipped off any of them, because they're too beautiful to have anything interrupt the beauty of all four corners in these frames. Look at this. This is something out of like a cross between, wow, I don't even know, Mad Men and some other moment in New York City history here.
My friend Jonathan's uncle. I didn't know it when I shot the
Really?
picture.
Wow.
My dear friend Jonathan Scheuer, and that's his uncle.
Wow.
I had no idea.
The beauty of the subways, man, the romance in the subways and the moments on the street with the wonderful immigrant city that it's always been and will stay, we hope. And
yes, we do hope.
We do hope, big time. And wow, looking at this image, man. Check her out with what kind of a cigarette was that?
It was identified as an Eve cigarette.
An Eve cigarette.
It was not a Virginia Slim, which is what I thought it was. It was an Eve, and these were cigarettes that were marketed, to women, obviously.
Wow.
And women smoked them.
Wow. Unbelievable. But look at this. Look at this. Look at the beauty of this image here. The reality of going to work, the executives back in the days on the streets and hitting the subway. They were real, man. They were real back in the days, man. And there's a photographer there you can identify. I know. That's
my friend Bruce Gilden.
Yep. Let's shout out to
Bruce. Out shooting that day together.
Yep. And, the one thing, man, also back in the days, people reading the tabloids or people reading the newspaper with the bold headlines back there. Mystery man, not a bright moment here, but mystery man slays co-ed. A horrible moment, but what a true New York City photo there. On
the guy has given me the finger.
That's right. Look at that.
But, I mean, you wouldn't know that. You would know that if it was motion, but he's actually raising and lowering his middle finger as I'm photographing him through the window of the train. I'm in the train, sitting down in the train, and I put the camera up against the glass, and
I know that feeling all too well, having been given the finger many times, taking people's pictures on the subways and the streets.
We almost put that one in the first book.
Yeah. And it's so rich. Nothing is superfluous in the images. It's
no, they're just they all. I was looking at this photo, Regina, and in New York City, there's a legendary New York City broadcaster named T.Y. Chang, and I could swear that's T.Y.
I think that is him.
I could swear that's him. T.Y., if you're watching this broadcast and that is you, you're a part of the Spin It Social Hour with the history of Richard Sandler and the streets of New York City. We know what a great broadcaster you've been over the years. T.Y. is a legend in New York, in my opinion, a great broadcaster if I say Eyewitness News and I'm wrong, I'm going to be really embarrassed. But anyway, let's move on here to the photographs here. Wow. I mean, it's funny. I look at this photo, Richard, and I took a photo in a certain way on the subway about a year ago. And I remember the moment because a woman walked over to the people I was taking the photograph of, and she said, "Did you know that this creep was taking your photo?" And I looked at her. I said, "Ma'am, first of all, I'm not a creep. Second of all, I'm a photojournalist. And third of all, I'm documenting the streets and the subway the way many people do. But this photo is just another classic. Because on my photo, everybody's on their phones. In your photo, everybody's reading."
Yeah.
Well, that happened pretty quickly. Yeah. That change happened awfully fast. We're still spinning. I wanted to mention one thing.
Yes.
Charles Harbut, who was a very good friend and a very brilliant writer, a very brilliant photographer, and a very brilliant writer on photography, said one thing that I wanted to quote.
Please.
At the end of his epilogue to his book called Travelogue, he says, I'm paraphrasing a little, but he said, if you want to know if a photograph is good, ask yourself, if you want to know if a photograph is good, ask yourself, is life like that? Is life like that? And the answer has to be yes and no, but mostly yes. So, you need to have that edge that makes it a photograph, which is different than reality, right? You take the world and you put a frame around it, and you have different relationships than you have with with actual seeing.
Right.
But it's really nice to see these, in a bunch, and I, the more I see them, the more I'm now getting, ideas for, how to put them together. But this is very exciting to me. Okay, so that's Robert, and that was that Robert and June Leaf,
right,
his wife, and this was that same day that we were all out there.
Yeah.
And, I decided to just show the two of them.
Yeah, the great Robert,
tenderness, the real tenderness there
Beautiful.
Master, the guy that, burned down the house for everybody to walk into, I mean,
Legendary Robert Frank, everybody. The
so
legendary
it was Robert that made the first sort of significant tilted picture
Right.
that Gary Winogrand picked up on. And Winogrand, when I took a workshop, as I mentioned, with Winogrand in '77, and he mentioned that picture, the preacher with the cross walking towards a river, and that picture's tilted.
Right.
And he said he advised everybody to just, tilt pictures, because the thing about tilting a picture, go back to that one before. The thing about tilting the picture is that the longest axis, obviously, of a rectangle is the what's the word? It's the edge to edge, lower right to upper, lower left to upper right.
Right.
Diagonal.
So so you can get more in by tilting the camera. At least on the diagonal, you can get more in than any other place in the frame. And generally speaking, when the tilt happens, it's probably because you've gotten a little bit too close.
Right.
This was at an opening.
Sorry, opening.
At one of the galleries.
Right.
So this is just, the raw material of another book.
Right.
And it's really a pleasure. And
I am honored to have you on the show to go through this work together. For many people,
thank you.
Many people seeing this for the first time on the Spinach Social Hour is a real treat.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
What do you think he's thinking here?
He's had a bad day, probably.
He just had a bad day, man.
He had a really rough day. I mean, if you're kissing the pole, you're really in bad shape.
You're in bad shape, man. I feel for him.
Yeah, he could barely keep his head up. That guy, he's working too hard.
Yeah, man. And then you have the younger crowd. Wow! Look at this.
And this one also, I didn't print until about a month ago.
Right.
That's beautiful.
But I like it. I like this one. This one's difficult to print.
It seems that way, I bet. Yeah.
It's probably 3 stops underexposed, or 2, at least 2, maybe 2.5 stops underexposed.
Right.
I never made the print, but then, in going through this old work, I've opened myself up a little bit. So that is to say, that's something I never printed it in the past. Right. But I've been printing things that I had not printed. This one is an old one. That's from 1978. And that was also, we considered that one for the first book.
Right. Well, this one here really strikes home for me because I grew up in Greenwich Village, as I said. And my mother lived right near, we lived near right there. She lived in Minetta Lane for a period. And I have to tell you, this photo here was, wow. I mean, I could look at this all day, man. The 3 old dudes just sitting there looking probably at I forget the name of the park right across the street there. Was it Pompey Park?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the other side of 6th Avenue, you mean?
Yeah, because Pompey Church is the other across the way, and then the other way is St. Anthony's. So yeah, and
they're looking west on 6th Avenue.
You can see these guys just walking out just earlier from down the block from Rocco's Pastry Shop, where I used to grab my cannolis and my cappuccino, and you can see them just having that, and then coming over here and sitting down, or getting some bread from Zito's bread shop, old man Zito, and the other guy hanging out with them there. What a great photo, man. What a great photo. What a treat. What a treat. Okay. So she was playing up to the camera here, obviously. Just a bit. And then we have the NYPD on the streets there and the old school jackets. And New York City was a land of fur coats back then, wasn't it? It really was. It really was. But wow, raw Times Square, man.
That's actually 34th Street. 33rd.
34th. Okay.
33rd.
You threw me on that one. Okay.
Yeah, 33rd and 6th.
Okay. Wow. Look at these. Absolutely beautiful. Washington Square, where I grew up. Man, I tell you, back in the days, man. And this photo, man, this photo is really something, man.
Well, this was actually the first one that I found when I went through the work again for the second time, starting 4.5 years ago. This was the first one I found. And I never printed this in the past because I didn't like the foot coming out of the woman's chin.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
But now I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's something, something shifted in me because this really tells the story. Excuse me. One of the scabs I'm definitely picking at is, as I say, the scab of race.
Right.
And so this one is, I like it a lot because it asks a lot of questions, but also formally it, it makes the grade as well.
No, it does. But, you have that love-hate relationship with certain frames sometimes, and then you grow to love them. Like,
you can't see them. You're not ready to see them sometimes.
Right. You're not.
Yeah. So, and so this is a picture I took of Gary Winogrand in it's like a Winogrand of a Winogrand, a Winogrand of Winogrand. Because that woman on the left, the two women on the left particularly, could easily be women in Winogrand's body of work. Women are beautiful.
Right.
Anyway, he's holding court, obviously, and he was a great guy. I'm so glad I got to meet him and hang out with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And then see him over the years every once in a while in New York City.
A Winogrand of a Winogrand, folks.
I just want to just recall the last time I saw Gary Winogrand,
sure,
which was on 57th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue in probably late 1983. He died in 1984.
Okay,
so he's maybe 6 months from dying. I saw him on 57th Street, and he had a Leica with a motor winder on it, a motor winder, okay? The master of the decisive moment, really, or one of the masters of the decisive moment, had a motor winder on his Leica.
Wow.
And I looked at the motor winder like this. And Winogrand looks back at me and he goes like this. He just shrugs. And not a word was said. And he kept, we said hi, from at the start of the meeting, and then he just, walked on.
Well, I have to tell you, we've run through pretty much everything, Richard. I think we're going to bring this to an end, but I wanted to say, what an honor and so thrilling to have you, one of my mentors, on early on in my life in photography, who made me appreciate photography so much more. Klezina, what a beautiful, beautiful thing to be able to bring you on as well, all the way from beautiful. And, please, your input was invaluable. And, the beauty of your spirit of working with Richard on this project and projects shines through. And I'm glad we were able to have you talk a lot about different things. So, Richard, wow. I'm sure everybody's going to check out more and more of your work, those who may be new to it. There's always new people to it. Those who are indebted fans got to see some real treats today that very few people have seen of your work, new stuff that's going to possibly be in a second book. I'm over the top wow about having you on the show to be able to do that.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you for working with me this week on the Spin It Social or about that. But I'm going to start to close it out. If both of you could just stay there for a moment, I'll be back in a minute. I just wanted to have a word with you, but hold on. I'm going to take this off the screen here so everybody can say goodbye. But Richard, any last words to the amazing crowd we had today watching? And we had an amazing crowd.
Nothing. Just I'm very, very pleased that you did this, and very, very pleased to see Regina. on the screen, and this is what we got to do right now. And thanks for doing it very much.
It's my pleasure. So hold on one moment. I'm going to close it out. Hold on, everybody, because I'm going to talk about next week's guest, which is right here. I'm going to throw it up right here. Next week, we have Keiko Hiromi. From Boston. Keiko is a really great photographer from Boston. She's one of the shooting partners of Rick Friedman and one of his main assistants, who was a guest last week. I saw Keiko's work, having gone through Richard's, and I'll be honest, I did not know much about her, but I became such a quick fan of her work. I said, you know what? I have a time slot open next week. Let's bring Keiko on. So Keiko's going to be our guest next week, and I can hardly wait to bring her on. Let me also say that it's been wonderful having a sponsor for this show, Emilio Pardo, who is one of somebody I've worked with, who's a real incredible brand strategist out there. We have a new show called Real Talk Live from the Barn. We've been working on new episodes, and we're going to have one very soon. So look forward to it. But here's a quick, small intro clip. It's about all issues COVID, dealing with the economy. We had Seth Harris on, who may be our next Secretary of Labor. I hope so. I think Seth Harris is an amazing individual and a great economist. So check this out real quick.
Hi there. Welcome to Real Talk Live at the Barn.
All right. New episodes online soon. We will let you know. Thank you very much for all of that. I'm also going to quickly tell you about a great new show on Sundays. It's been on since the pandemic, pretty much. She's on Call, Sundays at 11 a.m. An incredible show with Dr. Sujana and Dr. Marina. Every week on Sundays at 11 a.m., talking about all issues COVID. And I have to tell you, folks, it has been an incredible, incredible hour today. So once again, thank you for tuning in to the Spin It Social Hour. And a big shout out to my colleagues Sri Srinivasan and Neil Parekh with the Sunday NYT Read Along. It is on every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Hashtag NYT Read Along. I had a minor snafu with the card this morning, so but please tune in to Sri's Sunday NYT Read Along, and we will be part of that every Sunday. So once again, folks, Stephen Kaplan for the Spin It Social Hour. Thank you very much for being here. Check out the Spin It Social Hour on YouTube, all 35 episodes. And next week, we bring on the wonderful Keiko Hiromi. All right, folks, thank you very much. Take care.